So we had a regular film camera, and my youngest was working that. And then we hired a sound man out of Bangkok, and we hired a drone operator out of Bangkok. So we had this sort of little ragtag group. That's what we were calling
Yeah.
ourselves, this little motley group. And so it was wonderful. But to answer your question, sure, yeah, you photograph all the stuff, you film all this, and then you come back. And then we also interviewed Michael just with sound only for voiceover. The whole film has a voiceover with him. So that was
Yeah.
professional audio with the Bangkok sound guy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Today, I am in conversation with Cade Martin. And Cade and I have had a little bit of a chat before the start of the conversation. I'm really, really looking forward to what this interview is going to bring forward because Cade seems like a very interesting person. He is a commercial photographer, and what I am really curious to know about is his recent 2-minute documentary called The Wheelchair Mafia, which he shot in Thailand. Without me revealing much else, I'm just going to say hello, Kate. Thank you for being a part of Now Boarding. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kate. So you maybe we can start with a little bit on your background. You are a commercial photographer, but is that what you have been doing? Was this the first career move that you made, or how did it come about that you became a commercial photographer?
Yeah, no, it's funny because I really never had a job. This is all that I've ever done. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia on the East Coast. I live in Washington, D.C. now. And growing up, I'm the only child of a university art professor. And so I grew up in this little community of painters, printmakers, sculptors. So growing up, I think I just received this visual education without even knowing it, just by osmosis. My parents dragged me to every sort of movie imaginable, good movies, bad movies that were inappropriate for a little kid to be watching in the 70s. But so got this sort of visual education. And to this day, I certainly collect photo books. I think I'm much more inspired by the cinema. You just go in, you just get in this sort of black box, and nobody talks to me for 2 hours, and I can just see these just big visuals on the screen and that sort of stuff. So when I first went to school, you're 17, 18 years old, and you put the blindfold of life on. And I just threw this dart, and I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer. And I quickly found out that wasn't my cup of tea, and I was rudderless. And I transferred back to this university and took a hodgepodge of classes: history of socialism, basic economics, an art history course, and a basic photography course, which was in the basement of this little church. And I remember really at that time, the only thing I was interested in really was playing basketball. And I took my basketball to this first basic photography class. I walked in, everybody's dressed in black. Some of them have their little black berets, and they're sitting there pontificating about art. And I'm sure they were just making stuff up. And I was just so intimidated. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to compete with these folks. And I'm going to drop this class. And I guess I was lazy and I never got around to dropping the class. And I kept doing it. And I was like, this is neat. I really kind of like this. And so I continued it, not thinking I was going to do it as a career. And I got out of school and I went to work for this little magazine, and it quickly went out of business, which I'm hopefully is no fault of my own. And then I realized how much I did not know about making a living, the business aspect of photography. So I got a job as an apprentice for a photographer in Richmond, Virginia, and I worked with him for a little shy of 2 years. And I really learned what business was out there, what to do, maybe what not to do, that sort of stuff. And I was interested in moving out to the Pacific Northwest. So this was the big Pacific Northwest explosion, the TV show Northern Exposure, Nirvana, all those bands. So I started going around talking to people and said, hey, do you know anybody out there? And I went up to DC and I talked to this one guy and we hit it off. And he goes, call me when you get back. And I go, okay. So the minute I landed, I called him up and he goes, hey, I have this project in India in the fall for National Geographic. Would you be interested? And I was like 24 years old. And I was like, yeah. So it was on the Great Railway of India, the Great Indian Railway. So we went and we chased steam trains for 6 months in India. And
Wow.
actually, I met my wife in India on a steam train. It was called the Punjab Mail. And
So is your wife Indian or she's
no,
no?
her parents are originally from Mississippi. They moved to Mexico in the early 60s, and she was born and raised in Mexico. She was in documentary film. I was doing the still side. And so we all just met up in India and traveled together. And I don't know, growing up, my parents always had summer vacations off since they worked at the university. So we would always hop in the car. We would drive to Mexico. We would drive to Canada. We would hop on a plane and go to Europe. I was like 7 years old. I was the only child. And I was sitting in these great museums, and I'd be just absolutely miserable because I wanted to be home with my friends playing. And here I was in these museums just with my folks. But I'm a huge comic book fan, and since I was a little kid, as well as cinema. And then when I was in Paris, I came across Tintin, the Tintin books. I don't know,
Yeah, of course, I
Tintin, his
know
dog
Tintin.
Snowy, Captain
Yeah,
Haddock,
yeah,
24 books in all. Every single book, Tintin and Snowy are going on a different adventure in a different country.
yeah.
So I was just reading these things, tearing through them. And to this point, people always say, "What are you after, Cade? What are you chasing?" And I go, "I'm after a Tintin adventure." So that's my mission statement a little bit, not my official mission statement.
Yeah.
Geographic was based in DC. I moved to DC. I got a basement apartment. At the time, it was called an English basement apartment. I guess that was marketing, but it was really just a basement apartment. I moved my stuff in. I thought I was going to be there for 6 months. And here I am, X number of years later. Geographic, I did a few more jobs for Geographic, Discovery Channel. And just working with those guys, it's just the magic buzzwords. You show up, National Geographic, and the doors open. In India, they gave us the steam trains. Do whatever you want with the steam train. Of course, we had to keep it on the tracks and stuff, but just take it wherever we want. Going through the Ghats, we were on like the front of the steam train and just filming, and no safety or anything. You're just hanging on by dear life, just filming. And to date, when we were there, Mother Teresa was alive. I photographed a lot of people over the years, and people ask, "It's who have you photographed?" Blah blah blah. Nobody's really asked me, but I always pipe in. It's like the most intimidated I ever was photographing Mother Teresa. I was just a kid for one, and I'm about 6'2". She walks in, and she's all of maybe 4 foot, and she's stooped over. She comes in. She's not wearing shoes or anything such as that, and just her aura, just her presence. And I hadn't thought about it at the time, but she was a businesswoman and she was very hard. And you just think of all the people around the world that sort of approached her, come towards her, wanting something to be in her universe. And so that was very interesting. And at the time, the railway had donated land to Mother Teresa and her sisters for a leper colony. So she wrote us a little note and said, "Dear sisters, let this film crew come into the leper colony." So we went out and filmed that and all that sort of stuff. But so that was my origin story. And in DC, I moved back. I guess I had this apartment and I started doing a lot of corporate work, corporate annual reports. This was the time when annual reports were huge. And so I would just travel all over the place, and you would go set up, and then some hotshot CEO would come in, and you would have maybe 7 minutes total from the time they walked in, hair and makeup stylist, photograph them till they walked out. So I learned how to get people comfortable in a short amount of time. And so that sort of really helped me, I guess, my evolution. And my career was going great. I had a lot of work, but I was constantly looking at photography books. I was looking at movies. I was looking at the magazines, and I was always a little bit I was frustrated with the sort of the type of work I was doing. It's like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm the first to admit, I was the first to admit then I just didn't have the capabilities at the time for the type of work that I was interested in doing. So I started self-assigning myself projects that I wanted to do. And so over the years, I started to weave these into my portfolio. Just loved the game projects. And so then I started incorporating it into my projects, into my portfolio. And that's really
And these projects were filmed or it was
more
still
more
photography.
yeah, still photography. It was all still photography and maybe more conceptual in nature, starting to build scenarios, building narratives, building worlds, that sort of thing. And that really helped the evolution of my work. And that's personal projects have really been the wind at my sails. And to this day, I'm always on the lookout for things that interest me. And you look at this, you look at that, and it's 10 things. It's one, two, three. And all of a sudden, the seventh one, it's like time just slows down. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow. And it's almost like this calling, and I have to do this. And you asked about the wheelchair mafia. And that's very much how this sort of worked out. It's like Instagram, social media. It's like the doom scroll. You have a break, and the next thing you're just looking at your phone and you're scrolling and you're mindlessly scrolling, and you're going, "What am I doing? My eyes are going to pop out. This is a complete waste of time." And then all of a sudden, these little dogs appeared in my feed in wheelchairs, and I was like, "What in the world is this?"
Okay,
And
so let's
so,
let's backtrack a little bit. Did this happen when you were in Thailand on vacation with your family? Is when
oh
you
no,
started scrolling, or this was prior to you going to Thailand?
yeah, no, this was much more prior. This was probably 6, 8 months before. And
Oh,
say it was in the spring and came across it. And then we reached out to Michael Baines, who is the founder of the Man Who Rescues Dogs Foundation. I reached out to Michael and I was like, Michael, this is amazing. I would love to chat with you. I'd love to collaborate with you on a project. I'd love to do something for your foundation. We arranged a Zoom call like you and I are chatting right now. And we just
yeah.
had a little chat. And I said, I really honestly, I have no idea what I'm going to do or what I would do, but I think this is just absolutely amazing. So much of what I do is it's finding beauty in the unknown. It's like a visual scavenger hunt. And I really learned that from the sort of the National Geographic Discovery days where, you would just go someplace, you had an address and you maybe knew some information, maybe you had no information, and then you just walk into this environment and it's the first time you ever see it. And then you just have to create. You have to be inspired and draw from whatever it is very quickly. So I was completely honest with Michael. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I think this is just absolutely amazing. So I would love to come spend a little bit of time with you. And he was like, come on. We had a few conversations and then we went in probably mid to late August, where it was the sort of in between season in Thailand, but between it started to rain, but not quite the monsoon, but during the days it'd be hot and at night it would like just go, just the skies would open up. So we went, and but it's funny because I'm not a huge fan about talking about my work, but I'll talk about this wheelchair mafia like all day, every day. And what made this so special is that I did it with my wife and two boys. So the four of us went and it became a family affair. Our oldest just graduated UCLA and our baby is in NYU. So 2019, 2018 when we went. And it was just interesting. I'm super proud of them just to watch them and how they reacted facing the unknown and not being scared at all and just having the courage to embrace the sort of serendipity and the randomness of
So
life.
was this the first time that obviously your wife was a or is or was a documentary filmmaker herself, so she was in India doing filming the railways, the steam engines, but for your boys, your kids, was it the first time that they were actually being thrown into a situation where you didn't know what was going to happen next in terms of the project and how it was going to unfold?
Yeah, it's funny because our oldest kind of says that that both of them were raised to be able to be in the ready to roll position at all times.
Okay. So this is not
Whereas
a
my
new,
wife,
yeah, so it was not a new experience for them.
yeah, yeah. And this is the first time that we had taken them out on a project like that. Over the years when they were growing up, I would always take them to shoots whenever they were out of school or on weekends or something like that. But this is the first time that they heavily participated. But my schedule, their whole life is unpredictable. My wife's schedule was unpredictable. I was going one way, she was going another way. So they were raised, we didn't have a regular 9 to 5 job. And then it was like we would have time off on weekends. Hey, we're going to go to the beach. We're going to go to Mexico. And so it was always that sort of kind of spur of the moment embrace and sort of spontaneity. So I think
And
was,
I'm sure you agree with me because I think that this is the best way to live. And I feel that these kind of experiences are really especially for kids growing up, if they're thrown into such kind or exposed to such kind of situations and experiences, I think it makes them far more resilient and it makes them able to face the big bad world in a far more centered and mature way because they've already been exposed to. I think a lot of parents like to just shelter their kids and protect their kids for as long as they can because they feel like, okay, at some point our kids are going to be looking after themselves, so let's just shelter and protect them. But I think the more you expose them from a very young age, the more they become like really resilient and strong human beings. And I don't know if that's something that you agree with, and what's your
Oh,
take on it?
no. I completely agree with you. And it's resilience, as you say, it's grit, it's just comfort level within the unknown. Is it a foreign language? And as you travel, it's currency, it's language, it's all this stuff that it's uncomfortable. You learn to deal with it, and then it becomes not uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it becomes a way of life for you then. And
Yeah. And
yeah,
then you just
absolutely.
realize also that no matter where people are people, just the human element, and you just look people in the eyes and you just have a conversation. And I think it's just a wonderful thing. And I was in, I guess, in this last month, I was in Amsterdam and I was in Berlin and then I was in Mexico. But I was in Berlin and I was photographing this young woman and super nice. And I was like, hey, where'd you grow up? And she goes, Berlin. And her English was just amazing. And I'm just like, how many languages do you speak? And she was like, four. And I just feel like a complete idiot. It's just like the American school system, not to pick on that, but it's I go, I can barely speak English.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I
Yeah, so
totally,
so let's come back to Thailand and your experience there. So once you got there, the four of you, and you spent some time at the foundation with all these, I don't know how many dogs there are at the foundation. How did this whole wheelchair mafia film come to mind? That's one. Two, what were the different challenges that you faced while you, because one, you're filming dogs who are unfortunately deformed or disabled or whatever, and they are taken on these. I watched the film, so I know the background to it. They're taken for a run every day or something like that, if my memory serves me right. And but there are challenges because dogs are unpredictable, animals are unpredictable. That's one. Two, the weather. Three, the language. There's so many different, and as you mentioned, going to a different country, there is so many different aspects to that particular culture. So, how did you manage to put it all together? And what were some of the challenges, and how did you overcome them? And then, how did
well,
this whole direction happen? I'm really curious.
yeah, no, it's funny because I think 99% of what I do is just really showing up. You just find
So
these
are you
stories.
saying
And
there's no planning? There's no planning, you just show up?
for this one, I think I just showed up. Certainly, I did my homework on the wheelchair, the mafia. I looked at the Instagrams and social to see what the deal is. But for this, I bought my ticket. We flew over there and we just showed up. And I think we filmed for about 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days. And of course, the first day or so, we go in and we started working right off the bat. But it's just trying to see what's going on, what the rhythm is, which way these dogs go. The main challenge was really just keeping up with the dogs. These little suckers are fast in these
Yeah.
wheelchairs. And as you mentioned, they're disabled and varying degrees of disability. It could be somebody, a dog that got run over by a car and broke its leg or its back body is paralyzed, that sort of thing. In the wheelchairs themselves, there were maybe 44 dogs in wheelchairs, and I think maybe 300 in the foundation that were not paralyzed. They ran every day at 6:30 in the morning and probably 2:30, 1:30 in the afternoon. But as far as challenges, we've traveled, my wife and I, we've traveled, we've been in these situations before. And I don't know. It wasn't like we weren't intimidated at all. It was just, I guess, based on our experience and situations that you just go in and you just have to make yourself invisible a little bit and you're just this quiet observer and just see what happens. And then you start to create images. One thing that I certainly wanted to do was the point of view of the camera. I wanted to keep it low, super low. And so it was from the point of view of the dogs. So it wasn't, I'm like 6'2", so I didn't want to be
Yeah.
photographing down. I wanted to photograph and make these dogs as heroic as possible. So I knew that going in. So I actually did a few tests with our family dog before we went. So I did do a little preparation. It was like with the camera, we took the dog to the park and I filmed him and I tried different cameras and different film speeds and that sort of stuff. So I did have a little idea how I was going to approach it. Once you get to a situation like that, Mike Tyson, the boxer, had the famous quote that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
So you just roll with the punches. And so we got there, and then the first day or two, we're capturing things, and then you go, oh, I thought they were going to go down that path, but most of the time they go down this path. So you can start anticipating sort of their moves and where they're going to go, and you learn their routes. So by the third or the fourth day, you could get ahead. And we had my wife and two boys, and we would split up. And so it's okay, Finn is the oldest and Cash is the baby. It's okay, Cash, you're going to be at the end over here, and Finn, you're going to be over here. And then I'm going to be chasing this dog. Strategically, we had a little bit of plan so we could cover each of the little sort of outlets or routes that they would take for a little bit of coverage. But babies, animals, totally unpredictable. It's okay, I'm going to wait. And then you find out that the whole group had turned around and went some other way, and then they never showed up. And
Right.
it's funny because I have to say here that I'm not even really a fan of dogs. So this was like a therapy session for me. It was a facing my
Oh,
fears. When I was a little
200.
kid, I was 7 years old, I got bit in the face by a dog.
Oh
And
my
so I
God.
had stitches. And so I've always been like a little skittish around dogs. This was facing my fears, and it wasn't because of the project or the environment or the language or the currency or the heat. It was about being around all these dogs. And so I was there for 7 days and I was like, this is okay. And then I came home and I got my mom a little dog. And actually, I think I got ripped off because I thought I was getting her a toy poodle. And actually, it's a miniature poodle. So it's a little bit bigger than what I thought I was getting her. But I've fallen in love with this little guy. His name's Chili. And so we're like best little buddies.
Okay, so you did overcome your fear of
Yeah.
dogs, yeah, with that kind
Yeah.
of
So
thing.
that
That's
was
a
a fear.
very extreme experience, though, to overcome a fear. But anyways, so how much footage did you, because your documentary is just, it's like a mini with, I think it's only 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's 2 minutes.
Yeah, but how many hours of footage did you have, and how difficult was it, or how complicated and complex was it for you to compress it into 2 minutes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We probably had 5 hours of footage. I filmed most of it on my iPhone, believe it or not. We had little GoPros, which are these little small cameras that you could just kind of lay
Yeah.
anywhere. We put them on the back of dogs. I put them on the ground. These little landmines, and then they would come. And the idea was they were going to run over the cameras with their wheels perfectly. And gosh, we did it probably 100 times. And I think I got maybe 3 shots where it was a clean swoosh and it ends on this great swoosh over the camera.
Right.
And but a lot of times the dogs would come up and they would see this thing and they would stop and they would sniff it, or they'd completely just bolt and they would run over the camera and go. So we had a regular film camera, and my youngest was working that. And then we hired a sound man out of Bangkok, and we hired a drone operator out of Bangkok. So we had this sort of little ragtag group. That's what we were calling
Yeah.
ourselves, this little motley group. And so it was wonderful. But to answer your question, sure, yeah, you photograph all the stuff, you film all this, and then you come back. And then we also interviewed Michael just with sound only for voiceover. The whole film has a voiceover with him. So that was
Yeah.
professional audio with the Bangkok sound guy. And you started just going through and just finding little gold nuggets that we liked. And then based on his audio, just started piecing together this story. and certainly wanted to tell the story. And he starts talking about this dog. It was the neighbor's dog, and it got paralyzed. And he goes, "I know how to do this." And he built this wheelchair. And this J curve arc that we wanted to do with the film and sort of the pacing, where it starts off energetically. It's every day social media. I think the average viewer is like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So we knew that we wanted to start off where it was intense, fast moving, hopefully hook people. And then it gets into this sort of serious tone. And then it comes back to rock and roll and excitement and back to being superhero guy. It was like all of a sudden it was like the dogs, they're suiting up, they're putting on their outfits, and it was like Batman or Rambo putting on his weapons. And then they just take off every which way. And actually, I went to the Addies last night in Washington, D.C., and the Wheelchair Mafia won a gold
Wow.
Addy, which was
Congratulations.
great. But
Yeah.
thank you. But it was neat because they had a big, huge screen, and this was the first time I saw it on a big screen, and great sound, and it was just amazing to watch the audience watch. And then after, everybody just broke out in cheers. So it
That's
was a crowd
incredible.
pleaser.
Wow, that's incredible. That sort of with all the effort that you put in. And sometimes you just, because this was something that you just discovered off chance on socials, right? And
Yeah,
how it all panned out and how you ended up going to Thailand and how you did all of this. And so sometimes I guess if it's not planned in a sense, it the end product can also be that much more interesting and more real as
I
compared to when everything is planned and it's curated. It I
I totally agree with you. One, you have to embrace spontaneity. I think I have lived that, and I'm hoping to. I hope that I've instilled that into our boys, my wife and I. And it's you get this thing, spontaneity. Is hey, I have an opportunity. The world has gotten so small, and it's so easy to travel. And it's you see something, it's I want to go, and nothing's guaranteed in life. And it's if I have an opportunity, I'm going to go now, and I'm going to experience this now. And I talked to so many people that are friends and people I grew up with, and we talk about travel, and they're like, I would love to travel. I'm going to wait till I retire in 10 years. And I'm like, go now, just
yeah,
go.
yeah,
But who knows what's going to happen in 6 months or 8 months or that sort of
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But to
no,
your point about spontaneity work wise, I totally agree. I think personally, the first time you see something that is magic, you just walk into this thing. And I work on these campaigns and big campaigns where it's a much more studied and thought out approach where, everything is, which is fine, because you're bringing concept and ad campaign to life, and there's a lot of parties involved, and everybody has to sign off on this chain. So, this is what we need to build, and you build that exactly, you pre-visualize it, et cetera. But for these type projects, you just go in, and the first time you see it, it's just, I need to start working just right away, because I think if I just come back 2 or 3 days later, I start overthinking things. And it's just an instinctual thing that I just go with. And I just find it very inspirational personally. And I think the thing that I like the most about what I do is the physical act of the crawling around, making an image or making these moving images, looking at the final product down the road later after it's finished. That's okay, but I'm not really interested in that as much as just the act of
the
doing it and
process. Yeah,
interacting. Yeah,
yeah,
the
the process.
process and getting
Yeah,
to know
yeah,
somebody, even for a short amount of time. This Michael Baines, and we spent a week together, and there probably doesn't go a week that goes by that we're not WhatsApping each other, sending each other just little messages. And so he's a friend. And I don't know, I just really like it. And sometimes too, say this wheelchair mafia, you edit it and you spend so much time in the post production that you get to a point you're going, this is horrible. This is so bad. And then finally, you just have to let it free. You get
yeah,
to a point, you just have to let it go. And then you
yeah,
see people's reaction, like last night, who have never seen it before with fresh eyes. And it's, wow, that's special. That's cool.
yeah. So what's next for Kate?
And that's always a lot of pressure. That's always a lot of pressure.
No, I know there's
As I
spontaneity in whatever you do. I get that. for sure,
Yeah.
listening to
Yeah.
you. But
2 weeks ago,
what have you marked and said? What is the direction that, in terms of travel, that you're going to head to, and what have you found there, or you're hoping to find that will become another wheelchair mafia kind of document?
I would go back to Thailand in a heartbeat. We all fell in love with Thailand. Just the lay of the land, the people, even the temperature, the feeling of the air, the food. I've promised myself that I'm going to go to Vietnam this year. I've never been to Vietnam. I don't have a project at all there. Actually, I did come across the thing about the flower garden for the Lunar Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year in February, which just happened, and that looked
Yeah.
pretty amazing. So I would like to go there. 2 weeks ago, I was in San Antonio for work. One neat thing now is because I've always traveled, and when the kids were little, I would finish my project and I would just go home because you had to be a parent. So I'm still a parent. They're out of the nest a little bit at school and out of school. So now I have a little bit of flexibility when I travel to maybe stay in that location a little longer or go somewhere else. 2 weeks ago, I was on a campaign in San Antonio, and then right after that, I zipped off into Mexico and I did a personal project. I photographed migrant workers from Veracruz. And I went out in the fields and they were onion pickers and they had just started probably about a week before. And so just myself and a camera, and I just went out in these fields and just the serendipity and the randomness of how these people dress themselves and their hats and their masks. And it was just so much fun. And then the sun was going down and they were backlit and long shadows. And some guys had motorcycles and they had this sort of old truck that looked like out of 1930 that they took people back and forth at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And so I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I just really had a great time for a few days. To answer your question about what's next, it's my saying is I want to go where I don't know I want to go yet. So I just
Correct.
have to keep
That's
an
what you
open
said.
mind. I
Yeah.
have to keep an open mind, keep an open eyeballs, and if something all of a sudden hooks me, hopefully it'll become that next call, and then I'll just go.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. I've really enjoyed listening to you, and I can hear the passion in your voice, and it's so inspiring to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers will also get inspired. You should always never allow yourself to be restricted and never have boundaries, because you never know what, especially if you're a creative person, I think you should just allow yourself to be free and to flow, and let the opportunities come to you, because that's what normally happens when you have an open mind and you're willing to explore and go that extra mile, which is what you do. And therefore, it's very inspiring. And where can people watch Wheelchair Mafia? Is it on YouTube
Yeah,
or?
the wheelchair mafia. Yeah, it's on Vimeo, but you can see it on my website, which is
Okay.
cademartin.com, CADE Martin.com. Also on my Instagram, which is Cade Martin Photo on Instagram. So it's there as well.
Okay.
You just Cade Martin Wheelchair Mafia, you can Google it or whatever, and it'll
Yeah.
pop up somewhere.
Okay, great. And now you've also won an award for that documentary, which is so incredible.
Yeah, knock on
Congratulations
wood.
on
It
that.
won actually
Yeah,
in Paris. It won a documentary for short documentary in Paris too, a month or two ago.
that's amazing.
So
That's amazing.
yeah. So I'm happy that it's just fresh eyeballs and Michael's story with the foundation of Wheelchair Mafia, just get it out there as much as possible. And
Yeah,
of course, if
yeah.
anybody wants to donate to help the dog, I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, because I think it's a very unique project. But I haven't heard of anyone, I'm sure there may be, but I personally haven't heard of anyone who's got a foundation for dogs, and how dogs who have disabilities are being taken care of, I think is so incredible. And that's like passion. And I've never heard of anyone else who's done that. So I do hope that through your film, through our conversation, a lot more people are also aware of this foundation. And the next time they go to Thailand, they can go and be a part of the project, volunteers, or if they can donate from whichever part of the world they are in, that would be so amazing. And Cade,
Yeah,
thank
well,
you.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
they're certainly the real deal. They're certainly
Yeah.
the real deal. Their
a-
staff volunteers just spending that week with them and just seeing their passion and the amount of work that they put in. And yeah, it was really neat to see.
Amazing. Thank you once again. This was a
We're,
wonderful conversation.